Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and I'd like to welcome you to This Week in FCPA, Episode 95 for the week ending March 23rd, 2018, the March Madness is Truly Mad This Year edition. This Week in FCPA is sponsored by Affiliated Monitors. Founded in 2004, Affiliated Monitors provides professional, independent integrity monitoring and ethics and compliance assessments nationally and internationally and across almost all industries. With its knowledge of effective ethics and compliance programs and cultures, Affiliated Monitors is respected for its work as the corporate monitor on matters ranging from multinational corporations to small and mid-sized companies and even individuals. Having served in over 600 monitorships, no one has more experience as an independent monitor than the team at Affiliated Monitors. For more information on how an independent monitor can help improve your company's ethics and compliance program, visit our sponsor, Affiliated Monitors, at www.affiliatedmonitors.com. In this episode, Jay and I touch on a wide variety of topics, including Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, the largest whistleblower award ever, some recent developments around bribery and corruption in the United Kingdom, including a recent prosecution by the Serious Fraud Office where a company raised the adequate procedures defense for the first time. We take a look at the specifics of some very troubling whistleblower reports indicating increased retaliation, and consider it all in the context of the Digital Realty Trust versus Summers case. We talk about our upcoming events, and for both myself, Jonathan Armstrong of Coterie Compliance, who will be coming to Houston to put on a GDPR workshop, and events where Jay's colleagues from Affiliated Monitors will be speaking. This is Tom Fox. This Week in FCPA is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist, back with another episode of This Week in FCPA, Episode 95 for the week ending March 23, 2018. The March Madness is Truly Mad This Year edition. As always, joined by Mr. Monitors himself, Jay Rosen. Jay, welcome.
Hey, Tom. We've got lots of March Madness to speak about, so let's jump right in and let's talk about Cambridge Analytics, Facebook, and the U.S. electoral vulnerability.
So, Jay, this story is just so all-encompassing on so many fronts. This may be one of the stories of the year, and here we are even in March. And I say that because from an economic perspective, Facebook has lost, I think, nearly $40 billion in value. The U.S. stock market went down 2.5% because Facebook tanked, also in conjunction with other news about a potential trade war from the administration. But the reverberations by these revelations are just almost mind-boggling. So let's start with Cambridge Analytica. First, I would note that I'm glad I went to Oxford, not Cambridge, so I'm not associated with this. Number two is that the CEO of Cambridge is apparently quite a character, and he believes in bribery, corruption, using sex traps to film and compromise candidates, and said all this on a video. So I think that really speaks to the type of organization Cambridge Analytica is and where it may be heading. So Cambridge Analytica stole 50 million plus users' data from Facebook and allegedly used that to throw the election to Donald Trump. They did it, Jay, in a way. They had a third-party app on Facebook that you could log into affirmatively, and some 259,000 people did that. Now, those people agreed that Cambridge Analytica could harvest their data. Fair enough on both sides, both the people who agreed to it by utilizing the app and Cambridge Analytica. But what Cambridge Analytica did then was harvest the data from those 259,000 users' friends. So, and those friends did not agree to have their data stolen, did not agree to have their data harvested, and did not agree to have their data used. And that's where we get to the 50 million plus. So just massive data breach. Facebook comes out of this just with much more than egg on their face. Turns out that Facebook had known about this for over 3 years and had done basically nothing. And since at least last summer, Facebook had known of the Russian hacking and utilizing Facebook to put fake news in place and did nothing. The person who raised it within Facebook has basically, as an internal whistleblower, not going to the public, not going anywhere else, has basically been run out of the company. The whistleblower in England who blew the whistle on the Cambridge Analytica breach or data theft and utilization of the Facebook data, Facebook deleted his account. So this does not speak very well of a company that wants to take responsibility for its actions. It doesn't speak very well for how the company has policed itself. Mark Zuckerberg received withering criticism, first because he hid behind the excuse that he wanted to marshal all the facts before he went on the public record. He has now gone on the public record. He gave a speech. He did admit this was a major trust issue and that there were actions Facebook was taking. Initially, Facebook was going to do a forensic data analysis of Cambridge Analytica, which apparently has the right to do so. It's now backed off on that because the UK government has indicated it's going to take that investigation. Zuckerberg did in an interview with the New York Times give 3 concrete actions that Facebook was going to take. First, they were going to reduce the amount of data developers have access to. Then they were going to look at other developers to see if they had stolen basically information, and that finally Facebook was going to more closely police their apps. I would note that when 3 years ago, when it was first put out to Facebook or made known to Facebook that Cambridge Analytica had stolen this data, the response of Facebook was to ask Cambridge Analytica if they'd done that. Cambridge Analytica denied it. Facebook asked for a certification to that effect, which Cambridge Analytica provided to them. Facebook did no audit, no internal investigation, no investigation of Cambridge Analytica at all. So just a incredibly pathetic response from Facebook. But this has led to a FTC investigation of Facebook, and the FTC is taking a look at whether or not this response by Facebook in allowing this data to be collected by Cambridge Analytica, whether it be by hook, nook, crook, or theft, whether that violates a 2013 privacy or resolution of an FTC enforcement action. And if Facebook broke that agreement, it could fine the company up to $40,000 for each violation. So that's a pretty huge potential fine. But really, the Cambridge Analytica, obviously, incredibly bad tone at the top, whether you have to suspect that permeated the entire organization. Facebook's response was me no Alamo, and it's not my fault, not my job, don't ask me, which was equally bad. Data privacy experts are just up in arms over the Facebook response. Facebook response going forward is going to be seen. But the market sanction, frankly, is probably the part that stunned me the most, Jay. $40 billion nearly $40 billion in value disappeared, and the U.S. stock market almost tanked simply on the bad news of Facebook. Now, once again, it was compounded by other steps by the administration. Nevertheless, when you have one company who takes a hit and the entire market takes a hit from it, that really speaks to the power of Facebook and how important it is, both in the U.S. economy and the U.S. Kind of psyche and just stalled.
Yeah, just incredible ramifications of what's happening. I happened to catch a bit of an interview that Zuckerberg did with CNN, and the reporter asked him if he felt that Facebook should be regulated. And he gave a very interesting answer, and he said, well, it definitely should be regulated. The question is just how much. So that, I think, is an interesting position now that, everything that's happening with the upcoming data privacy stuff happening in the EU and what we're seeing now. I mean, this is really going to be something that I think the government is going to use as an opportunity. And the question is do we have representatives here who can fairly go out, and can they, in a bipartisan effort, can they manage a situation like this, or is it going to come down just to the other, just the same old noise that we hear out of DC? So I think there's much more to come on this, and it's interesting. We're going to talk about whistleblowers in a minute. So also, Tom, the way you said they treated the whistleblowers, both the internal one at Facebook and the gentleman at Cambridge Analytica, it's just kind of shocking that they would treat their employees this way.
And I should note, really, the internal Facebook whistleblower, he really wasn't a whistleblower, Jay. He was a senior executive, and he raised the data hacking by the Russians and the fake news, and tried to get Facebook to be more transparent. And for his efforts, his department of 140 people was stripped out from under him. There's now he and two others in his department, and they're basically he's resigned to pursue other opportunities this coming summer. So it really speaks to probably the paranoia at Facebook, but certainly their opaqueness and lack of transparency.
Yep. All right. So that, I think, sets the table for we've got an article from Dick Casson about the SEC awards 3 whistleblowers $83 million. And the Security and Exchange Commission made its biggest ever whistleblower award on Monday. It gave a single person $33 million, and then it split nearly $50 million between two others. The previous high for an SEC award was $30 million in 2014. And Dick reprinted parts of email from Labaton Sucharow. Hope I'm saying it's right. They're a whistleblower firm, and basically the charges were that Merrill-Lynch over many years had executed complex option trades that lacked economic substance and artificially reduced the required deposit of customer cash in the reserve account. In June of 2016, Merrill Lynch admitted to the wrongdoing and paid $415 million. Labaton Sucharow referred the 2016 Merrill Lynch settlement in its statement on Monday. And basically, what's very interesting about this, and we also pick up an article from Matt Kelly's Radical Compliance, is that it says that the two whistleblowers who shared the $50 million award basically could have got more, but there was an unreasonable delay in them taking their complaints directly to the SEC, while the other single whistleblower, the $33 million, went to the SEC right away. So when you take that and you kind of compare it against what happened several weeks ago with the Supreme Court's ruling in digital realty, it really does not promote a culture where people should speak up. And if they're going to be whistleblowers, they seem to have a higher potential win, and they will get more protections extended to them if they go directly to the SEC. So your thoughts on that?
So let me just add a couple of things. First of all, I really was struck by a point Matt raised, and it's the following. that the SEC considers numerous factors when deciding how much money to award whistleblowers: quality of information, amount of information, extent of cooperation, etc. Any of these factors can be a reason a whistleblower award goes up or goes down. But here, the factor was timeliness of the award, which caused there were three whistleblowers. Whistleblowers 1 and 2 submitted jointly. They received $50 million jointly, and then whistleblower 3 submitted separately and received $33 million. And the SEC clearly suggested the lack of timeliness was one of the reasons why whistleblowers 1 and 2 did not get as much as they could have. However, they did provide a lot of high-quality information and cooperation along the way: in-person meetings, conference calls, supplemental documents, identification of other key witnesses. So I found it interesting that timeliness actually reduced the award. And then if I could maybe pivot over to a couple of other points. Kevin LaCroix today wrote about this case, Jay, in his most excellent D&O diary. And he had three other points that I think were worthy of mention. First of all was what I ended with, Matt, that there was, it gives you some information about what the whistleblowers presented, and this is whistleblowers 1 and 2. Specific and detailed information which served as the cornerstone of the SEC's subsequent investigation and enforcement action. I mentioned the meetings, calls, and supplemental, but also the second whistleblower. So we had 1 and 2 together, and then whistleblower 3. He was the second in line, and he provided information that was previously unknown to the SEC and triggered a second separate investigation, contributing to the SEC's success. And then the third was a point that these three individuals were not the only whistleblowers on this matter. There were other whistleblowers, but the SEC determined that these individuals were not entitled to an award because the information they provided did not lead to a successful enforcement action, nor did it cause the SEC to commence an examination, reopen or give them different information than they had already received. So a lot of really interesting things going on here. And Jay, if we could maybe tie this back to the Digital Realty Trust versus Summers case from the Supreme Court in February, I think you can really only conclude that you have to go immediately to the SEC now. And given the size of these awards, Matt really emphasized how much larger the awards could have been. Could have been 30% of $415 million. So that means whistleblowers 1 and 2 left quite a bit of money on the table because of their lack of timeliness. And when you put that kind of financial penalty on people, coupling it with the lack of any protections, at least under Dodd-Frank, if you report internally, I think people are not going to walk, but they're going to run or get in their car or maybe even take a bullet train to submit to the SEC. So really interesting follow-on. And I just have to end with this. Jordan Thomas, who was the partner in charge at Labaton Suchero, as the lead lawyer in this, he was featured on the front page of the New York Times. So the moral of that story is be the top guy and you get in the top newspaper. So hats off to Jordan. I know some of his partners. I had an interview with Stephen Durham, one of his partners, this week on my podcast, the FCPA Compliance Report, and it was really a team effort. But Jordan, he started this whistleblower practice there, and hats off to Jordan on a huge success by the SEC.
Good stuff. So, Tom, overseas on the other side of the pond, we have an article written by some attorneys at CMS, and it appeared in the, the New York University website,
right.
NYU compliance, and it says jury is out on compliance in the first test of the Bribery Act's adequate procedures defense, spelled with a C. So what's that all about?
So we had some interesting information, news rather, out of the UK this week, Jay. And if I can hold off on that one to the end of our UK, maybe we need a UK segment.
Okay.
Have Jonathan kind of slide in and give us a UK segment in the future. But let me go through some of these stories and end up with that case, because I'd like to spend a little time on it. First of all, was that there's apparently a big problem in Scotland for the use of shell companies where the ultimate beneficial owners are not known. And interestingly, both the Labour Party and the Scottish National Party have asked to crack down on those. Now, the UK government is conservative, so it's a different party, but even Prime Minister May has indicated she would like to take a look at this and crack down on the dirty Russian money flowing into the United Kingdom. So perhaps we'll have some information on that. The second is the Serious Fraud Office was able to recover a bribe paid to a Chadian, I guess would be the word, foreign government official, as a bribe from the Canadian company Griffiths Energy. So kudos to the SFO for getting an award to get the money back. They spent 4 years trying to recover these proceeds, and it will be transferred to the UK's Department for International Development, which will identify projects in Chad to invest in to benefit the poor of the country. And finally, and those two articles from the Wall Street Journal came from our good friend and colleague Sam Rubenfeld, and also by Mara Lemos-Stein in the Wall Street Journal Risk and Compliance Journal, their online publication that is really one of the top compliance sites that you need to take a look at every day if you're not, is an article that the UK's Financial Conduct Authority has launched a consultation basically asking for public comment on its decision-making framework for identification, diagnosis, remedy, and evaluation of potential violations. So I think it's always great, Jay, when the regulator, whether it be in the United Kingdom or in the United States, really asks for comment from the public and certainly from the constituents who are in front of them, whether that be people like yourself who are providing a service, people like myself, maybe more of a commentator, and then certainly practitioners and companies who go before regulators. So kudos to the FCA for that. And now if I could spend a little bit of time on the article you referenced entitled "The Jury is Out on Compliance in the First Test of the Bribery Act's Adequate Procedures Defense." This case went to trial in the United Kingdom, involved Skansen Interiors Limited, and one of their managing directors had paid a bribe. He had offered to pay a subsequent or second bribe, which was stopped by the company. The company initiated an internal investigation, discovered the Bribery Act had been violated, fired the individuals involved, and turned the information over to the Serious Fraud Office. And then the Serious Fraud Office really did what I thought was a very interesting action, Jay. They brought a criminal action against the company. They did bring criminal actions against the two former employees who pled guilty. The company tried to claim, or rather claimed as its defense, that it met the adequate procedures part of a defense which is available under Section 7 prosecution. This was what's called a Section 7 prosecution. And it basically the company tried to claim, look, we're a small 30-person outfit. We don't have a lot of money. We tell people not to pay bribes, and we expect that kind of conduct. We have posters which say, don't pay bribes. And that's our defense. And of course, that was completely seen through by the jury. This was not a court case, trial by judge. So we had a jury who saw through this and they were convicted. But it really brings up a couple of points that I think merit further discussion. The first of all, it turns out that the company itself, Skansen Limited, had gone dormant, so it's no longer exists. So number one, why are you wasting time bringing a criminal action against a dormant company? And then two, and perhaps the most troubling issue that I'm still struggling with myself, Jay, is what's the incentive of a company to self-disclose if you're going to be criminally prosecuted? Now, I understand that in the United States, we have deferred prosecution agreements, making a company subject to criminal prosecution. But I can't think of a case that went to trial, FCPA case that went to trial on a criminal side where the company self-disclosed their actions. You're going to get some credit for that. And so the question is, what incentives does this give UK companies to self-report if you're going to be criminally prosecuted. My suspicion would be that since they thought they were dormant, they wouldn't be. Really interesting case. I commend everyone to read the article because it lays out in detail Skanson's defense, which I just highlighted some of the more inane ones that I thought were inane, and that if you don't have a full anti-bribery, anti-corruption policy and implement it along the guidelines of either adequate procedures, 6 principles of adequate procedures, or the 10 hallmarks of an effective compliance program, you're going to be convicted.
All right. So that brings us to the home stretch here. First thing we want to talk about is something from Ben DiPietro in the Wall Street Journal Risk and Compliance column, and this is from earlier this week. And Pat Harned and the group at the Ethics and Compliance Initiative have come forward with a whistleblowing benchmark report, and it's very timely, especially with what we've just been talking about. And the findings were that 69% of respondents said that they reported misconduct they saw, and that was up from 64% in 2013. So while that seems to be a good figure, bad news is for those coming forward to report the problems, the number of people who said they suffered retaliation for speaking up rose to 44% from 22%. And normally there's a very close correlation between the rise in reporting and any increases. So in terms of why this may be happening, Ms. Harned said it's hard to say exactly why. It could be the kind of misconduct people are reporting is more serious or may involve their own supervisors. Any way you look at it, it's a troubling thing. When workers have high rates of retaliation, they are far less likely to report things in the future. And the worst news in the survey was that there is minimal progress that companies are making, creating cultures where their employees think are strong and grounded in good values. About 21% said they work at a company with a strong culture, up from 18% in 2003. These numbers could be vastly improved, she said. Across the country, there is no evidence companies are really taking steps to drive a stronger culture. And despite the fact that we know that, it doesn't appear that across the U.S. there has been enough of an effort to really address it. So this really, the numbers tell the story, and especially in the last story we were just speaking about going directly to the SEC, it really seems to paint a very bleak picture if you are a compliance officer at a publicly traded or even a private company, that if your employees feel that they don't have the ability to address problems and bring them to you, if the remedy instead is going to be going right to the SEC, it sounds like we need to relook at some of the deterrence factors and some of the way we are trying to incentivize our workforce to speak up.
And Jay, do you, in light of this report from Ben, and then the whistleblower issues we raised earlier, both in the Facebook matter and the whistleblower award, we should note that whistleblower award, it turned out the whistleblown company was Merrill-Lynch. But the issue against Merrill-Lynch, with this sort of information, do you draw, and of course the Supreme Court case, Digital Realty Trust, do you think it's even going to lead to greater or larger numbers of SEC reports, or do you not link those two?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the SEC reports go up, but I think what's going to be interesting, and you said we're only in March now, so there seems to be just an incredible amount of news flow that we're digesting every week. And it sounds like we need to start to rethink things, because the position that we find compliance officers are in, and especially people who want to do the right thing in companies, it sounds like the past deterrent effect have not really helped much at all. And especially with those dismal numbers, I don't know if we can make any correlation between the morass that we're in politically and the fact that people don't listen to each other, they talk at each other, and wondering if we are starting to see a similar issue arise within internal and ethics and compliance policies within companies.
So I think this is something that we're definitely going to have to continue to keep an eye on as stories come out. But I guess the point I want to maybe throw back for you, and certainly in your role as Mr. Monitors and with affiliated monitors, is this something that a cultural survey or a culture audit can help detect so that a company can have the opportunity to remediate this issue, or is that something really completely different in your mind?
No, I think you raise a great point, Tom, that what we're starting to see within the marketplace, and just using this 3-month sample size, is that we have lots of folks and companies reaching out to us, and instead of waiting for the fact that whether or not they sign some type of instrument, a deferred prosecution agreement saying they need a monitor, they're looking at bringing in people like ourselves to do a proactive ethics and culture assessment. So the thought would be is if you discover something internally that's happening, not only are you going to want to bring in forensics folks or outside counsels to run an investigation, but concurrently they're looking at bringing in ethics and compliance experts like ourselves to initially help with a risk assessment, to try to look for where there might be failures in control, and to immediately begin remediating. And should they actually go forward and have to go to a regulator, we feel that they will be in a much stronger position because they can show concrete action that they've taken to not only investigate, but also to begin the remediation process.
I think we're going to have to watch this one, and really I don't want to say we've seen a theme, but Q1's theme may just be the whistleblower and all the ramifications we've been talking about. So we may have to take that one up on everything compliance, Jay.
Okay. And we got one last story. We'll get it in under the wire. Uber brings in the Holder Report co-author as Deputy General Counsel, and Angela Padilla is out. So Tammy Alberon, who's a partner at Covington and Burling and participated with Eric Holder in putting together the Uber report, will soon be joining them as their general counsel. And she will be second in command to the Chief Legal Officer, Tony West, who was appointed late last year after leading the legal department at PepsiCo. And basically, West said he is thrilled that Tammy has agreed to help him lead Uber's in-house legal team. She will be his trusted right-hand partner as they navigate some of the most interesting, dynamic, and difficult legal challenges facing the company. So what remains to be seen is they still have not brought on a chief compliance and ethics officer. So it'll be interesting to see who they fill that space with and whether or not Tony West brings over any of his former colleagues from PepsiCo. So we'll be watching that one as well.
So, Jay, I have to ask this, and of course, this is an on-the-record question. It's recently come to my attention that your house is on the market. Does this portend a potential move to the CCO seat at Uber in Northern California?
No, it portends a move further west to better schools. But no, I will not be going up to Silicon Valley. Thank you for asking, though.
Well, that's a great cover story. So we may have to watch that one with a little more jaundiced eye now. Now it's all becoming clearer to me, the whole timing and everything. So, but we'll watch that story as well, Jay.
All right. Tell us about your upcoming movements, what's happening with the book, and anything else we need to know for the weekend.
Right. So let me start, though, with my new podcast series, Innovation and Compliance, where I had Vince Walden from EY. And the response, Jay, was just unbelievable. I had over 3,000 distinct impressions on the first day. I'm up over 5,000 now. That's my greatest one day for any podcast. So check out Innovation and Compliance, available in the FCPA Compliance Report, iTunes, Libsyn, and JD Supra. Book sales are still, pre-sales are brisk for the Complete Compliance Handbook. You can check that out on my website, www.fcpacompliancereport.com. If you are in Houston, you absolutely positively need to come to the Gerber Greater Houston Business and Ethics Roundtable half-day workshop on GDPR. Jonathan Armstrong is flying over from the United Kingdom to put on a half-day workshop. It is Tuesday, April 10th. It will $75 if you're a non-member. It's free if you're a member. This is a must attend if you are in Houston. I am going to be leading some conversant roundtables, Jay, in Miami on April 4th, in Houston on April 17th, and Dallas on April 18th. And I'm really excited because they've asked me to talk about using data to drive ethics to the center of business. So I'm going to use a lot of the materials I've developed for the Innovation and Compliance series and really speak about how you can use data to drive ethics to the center of your business and I think make you more efficient and more profitable. I think actually I wanted to ask you about the SCCE European Compliance and Ethics Institute, what Eric and team are up to, and information about that event.
Sure. So this event starts at Sunday, and this year the European Ethics Compliance Institute is in Frankfurt. As always, it starts off with a volunteer project at 8 in the morning. Eric will be there, as long as my colleague Maria from Spain will have a booth and will be participating. And, some of our key SCCE friends will be there. Samantha Kellen will be there. Adam Turteltaub. Jonathan will be there as well, Jonathan Armstrong. So, if you're already en route to Frankfurt, please stop by and see my colleagues at the Affiliated Monitors booth. Other thing I wanted to also mention on the conversant front, that on Wednesday, April 4th, Eric Feldman from Affiliated Monitors will be participating in a webinar with the folks from Conversant. So we'll be publicizing that. And then in terms of conversant roundtables, we will be participating with one in Boston on June 21st. So heads up on that, and Vin DiCiani will be appearing there. Last thing, did you want to go to number 11? And well, actually, I should say the kudos because you're one of the recipients. Tom Fox, Mike Volkov, and Matt Kelly, all from the Everything Compliance Roundtable, were named top commentators for JD Supra for their 2017-2018 poll. And so congratulations, Tom. What exactly does this mean, the top 10? How did they figure that out?
So it's actually JD Supra, of course. It's a great platform for distribution of your written materials, and indeed my and our podcast series. They have a readers poll every year, and every reader is asked to vote on the top authors and submitters, such as myself, in their field. And actually, it's the third year in a row I've been number one in compliance, so I was extraordinarily honored for that. But equally thrilled that both Mike Volkov and Matt Kelly. Mike has been on the list before. Matt is his first timer, but so we got 3 of the 5. And I just want to say you better take your game up, Jay, because we're expecting great things out of you this year. So just be thinking about that.
Okay. I think, with the consistent shaming, I might be able to get some blogs up.
Well, it's all very New England, just more shame, guilt, and, of course, your background. It all comes together.
All right. When did the world champion Houston Astros begin their quest for another title?
The pennant will be raised at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, April 2nd. I can
Will
only
you be
hope.
there?
I have tickets. I can only hope the University of Michigan will not be playing for the NCAA National Championship that night, because if they are, I'm going to have to take a pass on watching the game, because I'm going to see them raise the pennant, something I never thought I would see in my lifetime.
All right. So on behalf of Mr. Tom Fox, JD Supra recognized blogger and the compliance evangelist, and myself, Jay Rosen, Mr. Monitor, we'd like to thank you for joining us for This Week in FCPA, Episode 95, for the week ending March 23rd, 2018, the March Madness is Truly Mad This Year edition. Thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of This Week in FCPA. If you have listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate our podcast. That would help in our ratings and also get the word out about the only weekly compliance and ethics wrap-up podcast. Also, if you have any questions, you can email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. You can email Jay at jrosen@affiliatedmonitors.com. Thanks again for listening to this episode of This Week in FCPA, and I hope you'll join us again next week, where we explore the top stories in compliance and ethics. This Week in FCPA is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.